Welcome to the Aesthetics of Cool podcast.
Hello, and welcome to The Aesthetic of Cool, where we discuss everything avant-garde, past-preserving, and future-inspiring. My name is Keela Boos, and I am here with
Dr. Terry Marsh.
We are your hosts, and today we're exploring the fascinating life of Quincy Jones. Quincy Jones was a tremendous talent who took everything he did to the next level. His genius is unparalleled in his lifetime. He recently passed away at the age of 91, but we were blessed to have him.
So Quincy Jones was born Quincy Delight Jones Jr. on March 14, 1933. He just passed away on November 3rd of this year and has left an indelible mark in the world of music and of culture. Ironically, Quincy has touched our lives in many ways, working with artists such as Frank Sinatra, Aretha Franklin, Celine Dion, Michael Jackson, you name it. Over a 70-year period, this man has worked with him. Born originally in Chicago and then moving to Seattle, Quincy showed early promise as a music prodigy. Quincy showed early promise as a music prodigy. He has worked with the greats, such as jazz greats primarily. He has worked with so many greats, including Dizzy Gillespie, Billy Eckstine, Count Basie, and that was even prior to his introduction into pop.
Well, he was about 20 years old when those things were going on. He became a band leader for Dizzy Gillespie in his 20s, but even prior to that, at age 20 in 1953, he traveled with band leader Lionel Hampton, the famous vibraphonist and band leader, in a European tour.
That's correct. As a matter of fact, he just dropped out of Berkeley when he started working with Lionel Hampton. So this man has touched American music in a way that few people have ever touched American music, and across genres.
And the world. When I read about his biography, which is incredible, he said when he toured over Europe with Lionel Hampton and company, he learned about the Swedes and the Danes, the Koreans, Japanese, the Turks, the Cypriots, and it touched him in a way that it opened his mind up to not only conflicts in the world, but ways to bring peace to the world as well. So he's a world-famous musician, composer, arranger, and trumpeter.
Yeah, his his recording career began at A&M Records. During that time, he was trying to really find his path. He recorded a couple of jazz albums. They did okay. They didn't do great, but where he really found his calling was in working with other artists. And some of those early artists actually ended up being pop artists. Some of those artists, including Frank Sinatra, and I think one of his early songs was a pop song. I can't even remember who recorded it.
I'm going to tell you, it was, he produced Leslie Gore. And Leslie Gore in the mid-'60s had that hit song, It's My Party and I'll Cry If I Want to. But she also had 3 other hit songs that Jones produced. And one of them I've heard recently in some movie, You Don't Own Me. So that was a pop song or a pop group. In 1962, his song Soul Bossa Nova was played and it was huge. But in 1997, it became a theme song for Austin Powers and that group of movies there.
So another interesting thing about Quincy has been his marriages, his relationships with both the women he had married and his children. Obviously, he was married 3 times, first wife being Jerry Caldwell. That was between 1957 and 1966. Secondly, Ulla Anderson, who he married in 1967 and divorced in 1974. And probably most famously, Peggy Lipton, to whom he was married from 1974 to 1990. Peggy Lipton was, at the time, a star on the TV show Mod Squad.
I remember it well. I was there watching because it was an interracial cast.
That's correct.
Yes.
Some of his numerous film scores have included The Pawnbroker, 1965, In the Heat of the Night, 1967, In Cold Blood, 1967, The Italian Job, the original Italian Job.
Yes.
That was a remake back in the early 1920s, I think, or 2020s. The Italian Job, The Wiz, The Color Purple. He has, without a doubt, touched lives in terms of his artistic prowess has touched film, theater, radio. I don't know.
Every form of music.
Absolutely.
Every form of music. And what's also interesting is he launched the careers of so many. So some of my favorite singers are singers that he launched and always used. Patti Austin is one of my favorite singers, and I only heard her through Quincy Jones albums. Mm-hmm. I remember there's one, Body Heat, that was phenomenal. Every song on that album/CD was magnificent. James Ingram was another. He also produced the Brothers Johnson.
Right.
Remember that? Strawberry Letter 23. Right. Some of you all out there remember that song. But it was the only word I can use is dope. It was dope. And he scored 40 films. He scored 40 in addition to producing all this music. He was just phenomenal.
Yeah, I like to think of him as more of a musically gifted, and I shouldn't even use that term, musically gifted. I think of him in relation to Stevie Wonder. Their music was different. However, both were timely. Both filled venues. Both were creative and over a long period of time. One of the things that fascinates me about Quincy, I think, most is the way he has not only over generations, not the way he has touched genres, and actually he did not adapt to those genres. In many cases, he created those genres.
He did. He set the trend. He set the tone. People followed him because they recognized his genius and recognized it from early on, from the time he was a teenager. As a matter of fact, he explores in his biography and the film that's coming up that his daughter produced. He talks about his relationship.
That one is out. Quincy Jones produced a film that came out last year.
I can't wait to see it. I haven't seen it.
It's actually pretty good.
Okay. But his relationship with Ray Charles, they met when they were teenagers, right? And they supported each other musically throughout their lives. But the kind of friendship and that kind of genius exchange just sends thrills through me, actually, because we know that they constantly spurred one another on to new heights.
Well, just as importantly, I think what they've done is set a standard for working musicians from that period up to today. You have more collaborations, more professional collaborations, particularly between African American musicians and artists. That started with Quincy, Ray Charles. It started with Quincy and anyone that he worked with. Particularly his first 10 years in the industry, he was primarily jazz.
Yes. That's right. And another point that we have to bring up and we'll explore in detail is his collaboration with Michael Jackson. So originally, Michael asked him for some producers who could work with him. And ultimately, Quincy said, well, I have some names, but let's us work together. Let's do this. And they came out with Off the Wall, which was an incredible dance. It was an album then. It was not a CD. An incredible piece of music from the first cut to the last.
It's funny because many of my students know that I worked with Michael Jackson for about 2 years, or on tour with Michael Jackson for about 2 years. And during that time, I think one of the things that I always wished for was an opportunity to be around or meet Quincy Jones. Never had that chance. And I almost, if there is anything in the career of my past that I am disappointed that I've not had the chance to do was to sit down with that man for an hour and pick his brain.
I am sure.
I'm not a musician, but I am a music aficionado. I absolutely love his work and have done so since my early teens.
Yes. And you know what's also fascinating is that Quincy Jones had some life-threatening illnesses. And at one point, he had a brain aneurysm, I believe. Yeah, he had 2 brain surgeries, and he was told he might never play the trumpet again. He might never be able to do this or that. But he overcame those very serious difficulties, persevered, and continued to make music for the rest of his life.
If I'm not mistaken, I think he had a heart attack. He was coming out of a heart attack right when he was working on the We Are the World album.
Wow. And We Are the World is another album because he pulled together the greatest singers and musicians at that time to sing for this event to end hunger in, was it Ethiopia?
It was primarily hunger in Ethiopia, which most countries were not paying attention to. It was he and a few other individuals who brought attention to and awareness to. Now, I wouldn't even say just hunger in Ethiopia, but hunger and disadvantages in other African nations as well.
Right. And he gathered together all these singers. He put a sign above the door saying, check your egos at the door. He didn't want people to outdo each other. He also mandated that they come in casual clothes, saying, we're not putting on a benefit. We don't need to wear tuxedos in this case. We are trying to gather money for people who are hungry and in dire need. And he did it.
Well, it was important for him to suggest that they check their egos at the door. And the reason why was because everyone that was on that invite list was a superstar in their own right.
That's right. Another very interesting point about him is when he worked with both Oprah Winfrey and with Will Smith. So with Oprah Winfrey, he appeared on her show in Chicago, and he told her at that time, I'm not sure if it had become a national show or not. I was living in Chicago though at the time, and I saw her rise to stardom, and it was imminent. But he told her that your future is so bright, I can't stand it. I see things that are going to happen for you, and consequently, he helped bring her on to The Color Purple, and her role was life-defining, and she entered into acting from that point. And then you also have Will Smith, who, as Will Smith says, Quincy Jones calls him and said, let me pitch your life to you, and created The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. From The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Will Smith's career took off astronomically, and he became a superstar, one of the few individuals in Hollywood commanding the amount of money he did command, but he was shown the ropes by Quincy Jones.
Absolutely. Few people remember that he was one of the producers of The Wiz, the African-American take on The Wizard of Oz. More people know him from his work on Off the Wall and, without a doubt, Thriller.
Yes.
Thriller changed the music landscape.
Right.
It actually created the creative video.
Yes.
That
was the length that it was.
Right. The creative music video was something other than just shooting a band or a singer singing. It was more of a theatrical.
It was.
And it shook. I remember people were just fascinated with that Thriller video.
And the choreography was magnificent, too. It was, the whole thing was astonishing. And you still have flash mobs all over the world recreating that Thriller scene where people run out of nowhere, come together, and start doing that dance, which I never learned to do. Did you ever learn how to do it?
No, I did not. If you know me and know my history, I've never been one to keep up with dancing.
Okay.
I can't even do the Hollywood shuffle.
Oh.
So, based on the amount of work that he has done, obviously working with other entertainers, other singers, and even other producers, probably the two most popular albums that he himself recorded were The Dude and Off the Block.
Yes.
And Off the Block kind of changed, probably, I think, to some degree, it was one of the first albums that maybe incorporated some rap and some jazz and
yes,
even hip-hop and R&B sounds into the same album. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. In fact, I think I have that. I have one of the last CDs. Now we're into CDs that he created, and it had
We went from 33s to 45.
Right. This one had Queen Latifah on it, Tone Loc, every hip hop and comedian, Shucky Ducky, everybody that you can imagine was on the CD. One of the songs Latifah was on was Killer Joe, his remake of Killer Joe, which was fantastic. The Tone Loc song was all of that. It was Quincy's Juke Joint. That's what it is. That was the CD, and it was astonishing. You have to go back, and it's going to take you a month or so to look over his discography and to listen to it and to see his progression and to become the master of music that he absolutely was.
Absolutely. Before we run out of time, I just wanted to make sure that we highlighted some of the honors that he received throughout his lifetime. In 1983, he was honored with an honorable doctorate of music from Berklee College of Music. I found that one interesting primarily because he dropped out of Berklee College of Music in 1950
right.
To tour.
But they were moving too slowly for him, and he had things to do, places to go.
He was awarded the Golden Plate Award presented by Ray Charles at American Academy of Achievement in 1984. He was nominated as a Grammy Legend with the Grammy Legend Award in 1992, and it's an honorary award, one of only 15 people ever to have received that award. The Academy of Motion Pictures and Arts, obviously that is where we get the Oscars. He was nominated with the Jean Hersholt Humanitarian Award in 1995. Obviously, we're not going to name all of them, but he's won BET Awards.
Tons of Grammys, armloads of Grammys.
Absolutely. Honorary doctorate from the Royal Academy of Music in England. Foundational inductee of the Black Music and Entertainment Walk of Fame. Honorary Academy of Motion Pictures Honorary Award. If you name it, he's accomplished it or achieved it.
Right, and won the award that is bestowed upon one from President Barack Obama for his lifetime achievements.
Lifetime Achievement Award, right.
Yes, absolutely. He was a phenomenal man. I'd have to do research to see who is next up in line, but certainly, as you mentioned earlier, Stevie Wonder is a close second to Quincy Jones because of his prolific songwriting, producing, music creating, synthesizer using musician, one of the first to do so.
Well, the reason that the reason that I see them similarly, at least their paths in music similar, is because both of them shook up every genre that they entered into.
Yes.
And they were fearless in the type of sounds that they were putting. Nobody had heard anything like Off the Wall prior to.
You're right.
Prior to that album. But similarly, nobody heard anything like Songs in the Key of Life.
Not at all. Or Intervisions. Yes. Stevie Wonder's discography is amazing, too, from the very first Fingertips. And let me tell you how I know about Fingertips. My sister had that on a 45 and played it all the time. I still have her 45s, the 33s, and my parents' 78s. So I get to listen to Ray Charles whenever I pull out that old record player, or some of those other fascinating individuals who were musicians.
But Keila, we're not the only ones listening to them. Believe it or not.
And that's the good news.
Some of the younger generations are now starting to experiment with listening to some of the older R&B stuff,
right,
and the pop stuff, and even some of the jazz. I've had students come to me that knew about Miles Davis, and I was surprised because he's been gone from us for a while.
He has. Another person with whom Quincy Jones worked, absolutely, Miles Davis. But he worked with every great that you can imagine. He just did. Also, I found it interesting. I didn't know that he had moved to Paris for a while to study composing. So he has learned from every corner that one can learn from all around the world.
Right. That was, he moved to he moved to Paris to study composing because he actually turned down some early opportunities to score films because he did not feel he was strong enough in those areas. So in order to enhance
his talent,
his level of expertise, he certainly pursued education.
Because education and learning is what? A lifelong endeavor.
That's correct.
That's what we try to impress upon our students here at Norfolk State every day. And certainly some get the message, but Quincy Jones was, there are not enough accolades to bestow on him. And Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles and others like them. So we honor him. He has passed away, but his memory will never be forgotten, nor his accomplishments.
And we also want to acknowledge that next week we'll be speaking about another legend who has
an icon in the dance world. We're going to be speaking about Judith Jamison, who was the dance director for the Alvin Ailey Company. But prior to that, she was his primary dancer, and she originated this fantastic dance that people still try to emulate, and some accomplish that, and some do not, but just a great talent. So we're going to talk about Alvin Ailey, his works, and then Judith Jamison and her contribution. She passed away as well about a week ago, and while these great talents and lights are joining the ancestors, we are joyful that we can celebrate their lives and also nurture those who come afterwards.
You know, I think it's wonderful that on the Aesthetics of Cool that we're talking about one of the coolest individuals who ever lived, Mr. Quincy Jones.
Yes.
Audience, you've been listening to The Aesthetics of Cool with Dr. Terry Marsh and
Professor Keela Boos, and we welcome your comments. And what else would you like to hear us discuss? That's really, really cool. All right. Thanks so much for listening. We are on WNSB Hot 91. You have a great day.